When a man is always on your mind but never reaches out, this is what it means. Have you ever felt that someone lives inside your head but never really shows up in your life? That man who occupies his thoughts as if he had rented a room in his mind. But when you expect a message, a gesture, anything, just silence. And the worst, you start to wonder if you're going crazy. A connection was invented that never existed. But what if I told you that this isn't about him? That in fact, this obsession reveals something much deeper about yourself. Something that Carl Jung would call the projection of your own unlived soul. That man who never looks for you may be working as a mirror that reflects exactly what you have not yet had the courage to face in yourself. In the next 8 points, I'll show you what's really going on behind the invisible backstage of your psyche, and why that pain has a much greater purpose than you might think. 1. He is not absent. You are the one who is casting your own shadow on him. You know that feeling that you've known this man for lifetimes, that there is something between you that needs no words. That's that. All this certainty may be exactly the problem. Because what you feel is not coming from him, it comes from within you. Carl Jung discovered something disturbing. We don't fall in love with real people. We fall in love with pieces of our own soul that we never had the courage to live. And when a man doesn't look for you but lives in your head, it's because you're using him as a movie screen. You project onto him everything you would like to be, but you are afraid. All that strength, that security, that freedom that you see in him, it's not his, it's yours, but it's dormant. Then your unconscious does a trick. It puts all this in a distant person, because it's easier to admire from afar than to assume inside. You obsess not because he's special, but because he carries the reflection of what you've rejected in yourself. Maybe you've learned that being strong is a man's thing, that having desire is wrong, that imposing oneself is ugly. And then this guy comes along who seems to have all of this, and you freak out, because deep down you want that for yourself. But instead of searching, you transfer. Wait for him to complete you, but no one completes anyone. This is an illusion. What really happens is that you are running away from your own power, and the further it goes, the stronger the projection becomes, because distance is the perfect setting for fantasy. If he got close, you'd see that he's human, flawed, limited, and the magic would end. But as long as he stays away, you can keep casting your shadow on him, that part of you that has never been accepted, never seen, never lived, and that hurts. Because you feel like you're in love, but in reality you're just torn. Do you want it, or do you want to become what you imagine it to be? The answer changes everything, because if it's the second, then the problem was never his absence, it was yours. 2. The imaginary man always beats the real man. I'll tell you a truth that hurts. The guy who lives in your head is unbeatable. No man of flesh and blood can compete with the version you created, because in your mind, he's perfect. He understands you without you speaking. He knows what you feel. It's exactly what you need at the right time. But this does not exist. You've built a character, and this character works like a drug. Every time reality disappoints, you go back to fantasy. And there it is, always available, always intense, always the way you want it. The problem is that it takes you away from real life, because no real man is going to be as convenient as the one in his imagination. None will get all the lines right. None will have all the qualities without the defects. And the more you feed this fictional version, the more impossible it becomes to connect with someone real. You start comparing. The guy who asks you out doesn't have the mystery. What shows interest seems weak. What is present seems ordinary, because none of them are the ghost you created. And then you get stuck, trapped in a relationship that never existed, but that prevents you from living the ones that could exist. Did you know that the brain does not distinguish well what is real from what is imagined. When you fantasize about someone, your body reacts as if it's happening. It releases the same hormones, activates the same areas. You feel butterflies in your stomach for a conversation that never happened. She is anxious, waiting for a message that will never arrive. And that is addictive, because fantasy has no rejection. There is no conflict, there is no boredom. It's just intensity. I just wish, only promise, but a promise that is never fulfilled. And deep down, you even prefer it that way. Because if it really arrived, you would have to deal with imperfection, with the strange silences, with the differences, with the fact that maybe he's not even that amazing. And this scares more than loneliness, so you keep him away, at the perfect distance, close enough to feel something, far enough not to dismantle the illusion. If this message resonates deeply within you, and you're ready to understand why some connections stay long after they end, discover the Jung method. The link is pinned in the first comment. 3. You don't want him. You want the version of you that he represents. Here's the secret that changes everything. You're not in love with him. You're in love with the person you become when you think of him. Do you know that feeling of being more alive, more intense, more awake? He's not the one who causes it. It's yourself, allowing yourself to feel. It has become the pretext for you to access parts of yourself that are normally locked. When you think about it, you feel braver, more sensual, deeper, and you think it's because of him. But it's not. He only gave you unconscious permission to be what you already were, but he wouldn't let you leave. Carl Jung would say that this man has become the symbol of her animus, the internal masculine energy that every woman carries, that part that acts, that desires, that conquers, and many times we repress this because we were taught to be delicate, well-behaved, passive. So when a man appears who seems to carry these qualities, we go crazy, because we want that for ourselves. But instead of assuming, we want him to give it to us, as if he were the source. But he's not. You are. That strength you feel when you think of him, it's yours. That fire, that courage to imagine a different love, a different life, all yours. He was just the trigger. And now you're addicted to the trigger, thinking that without it, you don't feel anything else. But that's a lie. You don't need it to access this version of you. You just need to stop asking for permission. How many times have you felt more beautiful just because you imagined he would look at you? How many times have you written better, thought deeper, felt stronger, just because it was in your head? That wasn't him. It was you giving yourself space. And the saddest thing is that you condition your own power to the imaginary presence of someone who is not even there. You have taken yourself hostage to a ghost. And meanwhile, the woman you could be without him, without waiting, without projection, remains asleep, waiting for you to realize he was never the prize. You always have been. 4. His silence is the loudest invitation your soul has ever received. It sounds cruel, but his silence is not rejection, it's redirection. It's as if the universe is pushing you to a door you never wanted to open, the door inside yourself. Every time he doesn't respond, you feel an emptiness. And it is exactly in this void that the answer lies. Because what you're calling love may just be fear of looking at your own life. As long as you're obsessed with it, you don't have to deal with the rest. You don't have to face the work that suffocates you, the relationship that has already died, the version of you that you abandoned. He becomes the perfect excuse. You're busy waiting, achieving, analyzing every detail, and it distracts you from the real loneliness, the one that has nothing to do with being alone, but with being away from yourself. Jung called this the escape from the self. We create external dramas so as not to face internal chaos, and this man became her favorite drama. But what would happen if you stopped waiting for him? If you let silence be silence, without inventing meanings, without creating theories, without feeding fantasy, you would have to feel what is underneath. And maybe it's fear. Fear of not being enough. Fear of never being chosen. Fear that, in the end, you're not as special as you need to believe you are. And then his silence stops being about him and turns on you. About the wounds you never healed. About the self-love you never built. About the loneliness you never learned to inhabit. And that, as painful as it is sacred. Because that's where the real transformation begins. When you stop looking for validation in an absent man and start asking yourself, why do I need this so much? What is missing in me that I put in his hands? And more, what am I avoiding feeling by keeping this obsession alive? These questions do not have easy answers, but they are the ones who set you free. Because the moment you understand that his silence is an invitation for you to finally listen to yourself, everything changes. You stop looking for him and start finding yourself. 5. The further he goes, the closer you get to what you never wanted to see. There is a disturbing psychological truth. We cling more to what avoids us. It's not love, it's wound. Every time he doesn't look for you, something inside you screams, see, you're not good enough. And this messes with old traumas, with rejections that you don't even remember anymore, but that the body still keeps. Perhaps his father was distant. Maybe your mother loved conditionally. Maybe you grew up feeling like you needed to prove yourself all the time. And now this man is repeating the pattern. But you don't see that. You think you're in love. But in fact, it is trying to fix the past. You're trying to get him to choose you, to prove that you've always been worthy of choice. But it doesn't work like that. You don't heal old wounds with new validation. You heal by looking at the wound from the front. And that's exactly what you're avoiding. Because while he occupies your mind, you don't have to face the girl who never felt enough. The woman who still believes she needs to be perfect to be loved. The part of you that's terrified of being seen for who you really are, and yet being left behind. So you prefer fantasy. He prefers to wait for someone who never arrives, because it hurts less than admitting it. Maybe the problem was never that you weren't chosen. Maybe the problem is that you never chose yourself. Carl Jung said that everything that does not come to consciousness returns as destiny. In other words, if you don't look at your wound, you will repeat the situation until you get tired. It will attract unavailable men. You will fall in love with those who ignore you. You'll think it's bad luck, that it's coincidence, but it's not. It's a compulsion to repeat. You're unconscious, trying to show you what you still need to heal. And this man? He is just the messenger, the mirror, the symptom. The disease is elsewhere. It is in the child who has learned to beg for affection, in the adolescent who molded herself to be accepted, in the woman who still believes that being loved depends on performance. And as long as you don't look at it, you'll continue to obsess, not by him, but for what it represents, the chance to finally be seen, validated, chosen, but by someone who will never give you that, because healing does not come from outside. It never came. 6. It is the gatekeeper of your unconscious, and you have not yet paid the entrance. Do you know what's craziest about this whole story? He doesn't even know the role he's playing in your life. He has no idea that he has become the guardian of an inner door that you are afraid to walk through. This obsession isn't about winning his love. It's about facing what's on the other side of the fantasy. And what's there? Everything you never wanted to admit about yourself, your fears, your needs, your deepest desires that you have spent your whole life hiding. You use it as an excuse not to really live. While you're stuck in it, you don't have to take any chances. You don't need to expose yourself. You don't have to try to build something real with someone who might let you down. Because fantasy is safe. She never really rejects you. It never abandons you. It just sits there giving you enough emotional crumbs to keep you hooked, but never enough to satisfy you. And deep down, you even like it, because dissatisfaction keeps you busy. It gives you an emotional purpose. It makes you feel like you're living something intense, even if it's just in your head. Jung talked about the complex, that psychological knot that imprisons vital energy. And this man became his complex. He concentrates everything, his desire, his pain, his hope, his anger, and while it's there, you don't need to distribute that energy to other places in your life. You don't need to invest in your career. You don't need to take care of friendships. No need to ask yourself what you really want out of life, because he already has an answer ready. I want him, but this answer is a lie. You don't want him. You want to avoid the real question. And the real question is, who am I when I'm not waiting for anyone? What life do I build when I stop putting my happiness in the hands of a man who doesn't even see me? What do I do with all this love I'm wasting on a fantasy? These questions hurt because they put you in front of responsibility, of freedom, of the frightening possibility that you can be whole without it. And maybe you're not ready for that. Maybe you still need the illusion, but at some point the door opens, and you'll have to decide, do you keep waiting outside or do you go inside? 7. The obsession ends when you become what you projected onto him. Wondering when you'll finally stop thinking about him, when you turn everything you thought only he had, as long as you look at it as if it were the source of intensity, passion, strength, you will remain dependent. But the day you wake up and realize that all of this has always been in you, it will lose power. Because the truth is this, you only free yourself from projection when you rescue what you projected, when you stop looking outside for what is lacking inside. And this does not happen overnight. It's a process. You're going to have to start living the qualities you put into it. If you saw him as brave, you're going to have to be brave. If he saw him as free, he will have to conquer his freedom. If you saw him as someone who didn't need approval, you'll have to stop begging for others. And each time you do that, it's going to slow down a little bit in your mind, because you don't need it anymore to feel complete. You become your own answer. This scares a lot of people, because it means you're going to have to take control of your life. You can't blame him for not showing up anymore. You can no longer use his absence as an excuse for your unhappiness. You'll have to admit, I've always had a choice, and I chose to be trapped in an illusion because it was more comfortable than facing reality. But when you finally take on that responsibility, something magical happens. You stop suffering, not because he came back, but because you don't need him to come back anymore. You have become whole on your own. And then suddenly, he becomes just another guy, no mystery, without power, without all this load. You look back and think, how did I waste so much time on this? And the answer is simple, because you hadn't found yourself yet. You didn't yet know that it could be everything you were looking for in him. But now you know, and that changes everything. Because the end of the obsession is not about forgetting him, it's about remembering you. 8. The real date was never with him. It was with you all along. So that's it. The whole story was never about him choosing you. It was about you choosing yourself, that man who lives in your head, who chases you in thoughts, who never looks for you. He was just the mirror, the necessary detour, the crooked path that brought you here. Because if he had arrived right at the beginning, you would never have made this journey inside. I would never have looked at his wounds. I would never have questioned his standards. You would never have realized that the person you most needed to find was yourself. And maybe that was his role from the beginning. Not loving you, but forcing you to learn to love yourself. Not to choose you, but push you to choose yourself. Don't fill your emptiness, but to show you that emptiness was the space where you needed to grow. Carl Jung said that the encounter with oneself is the most frightening encounter of all. And that's why we run away. We create distractions, obsessions, fantasies, anything not to look at what really matters. But at some point, life corners you, and this man was the way that life found to corner you, to take you out of autopilot, to make you feel so intensely that you could no longer ignore what was going on inside you. And now you're here, on the other side of the illusion. Maybe it still hurts a little. Maybe you still think about him from time to time, but it's not the same anymore, because you know the truth now. He knows that he was never fate. It was just the bridge, and you've already crossed it. What comes now is different. It's not about waiting. It's about building. It's not about fantasizing. It's about living. It's not about being chosen. It's about choosing. Choosing to wake up every day and deciding to be the woman you've spent so much time projecting onto someone else. Choose to feel everything you had in store for him, but this time for yourself. Choose to stop looking outside for what has always been inside, because at the end of the day, the love you wanted so much from him, you already had it. I was just waiting for your permission to give it.